It requires leadership to realize that this is not over, and we're ramping up our communications to make sure that is the case.
Tonight, talks of a second wave and how the feds plan to support First Nations.
This is something all of our Indigenous kids need to hear. Their dreams are important, their voice is important.
A Mohawk filmmaker wins the Emerging Talent Award at the Toronto International Film Festival. And a close look at the Arctic autumn. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa RIDGEN. At today's Liberal Cabinet meeting, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau stressed Canada is not out of the woods yet and called for continued vigilance to prevent COVID-19 infections, while Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller said he worries for Indigenous communities in the wake of a possible second wave of COVID-19. Miller called a recent resurgence of cases in First Nations communities, quote, alarming, and said that Indigenous Services will provide additional supports to on-reserve nursing stations along with extra precautions.
The medical protocol applied to all the flights that go into First Nations on reserve that are remote. That's over 100 across Canada. There are strict protocols that we've learned from mistakes in the past to make sure that the nurses aren't vectors of transmission, and that needs to continue, but it requires vigilance, it requires uptake, it requires leadership to realize that this is not over, and we're ramping up our communications to make sure that is the case.
A coalition of First Nation groups in northern British Columbia wants provincial health authorities to share when there are confirmed cases of COVID-19 near their communities, but health officials refuse, citing privacy concerns. This week, more than 300 new COVID-19 cases were confirmed in British Columbia. There are currently 1,590 active cases. Hailsuck and New Chelmsford Tribal Councils and the Chilcotin National Government filed an application with the Provincial Privacy Commissioner asking for the data, arguing that it's of significant risk to their members. Chief Judith Sayers speaks for the New Chelmsford Tribal Council.
And asking the Ministry of Health to provide us with information on where there are confirmed COVID cases. And we have had we had no response for a few months, but they refused to provide us with information saying that, the individual rights is much more important than the collective rights of First Nations people.
We want to hear what you think about the demands for COVID test results to be shared with area First Nations. Tell us what you think. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca. You can find us online at aptnnews.ca and find us on youtube.com/aptn news. You can also follow APTN News on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more Indigenous news. A man convicted in the murder of a young mother in northern Manitoba has been sentenced to life in prison. Michael Okama received his sentence for second-degree murder in God's Lake First Nation, about 1,000 kilometers northeast of Winnipeg. It's the first time a verdict and sentencing have been delivered in a northern First Nation. Crystal Andrews disappeared on November 8, 2015. Her body was found on a trail in a wooded area in the nearby community of God's Lake. The 22-year-old was a mother of two. The justice who delivered the sentence said the killing had a big effect beyond her family and community because she is one of so many murdered Indigenous women. Okama will be eligible for parole in 16 years. A Métis man went on a long journey over the summer to draw national attention to a suicide epidemic in northern Saskatchewan. Tristan DeRoche started his 600-kilometer walk from Orange to Regina back in July. He was trying to call attention to the suicide crisis and the provincial government's voting down of a suicide prevention bill. When he got to Regina, he set up a teepee in front of the legislative building and started a 44-day ceremonial liquids-only fast. In early August, the province sought a court order to remove him and his teepee. In early September, a judge ruled that DeRoche could stay and complete his fast. DeRoche completed his fast earlier this week. It's been 60 days that members of Six Nations and their supporters have stood their ground at 1492 Landback Lane. The dispute is over development on a tract of land in Caledonia, Ontario. Continues and tensions hang in the air. Here's Annette Francis with an update.
I'm standing outside the 1492 Lamback Lane camp in Caledonia. Over the past few days, things have been pretty quiet here, and today it's quiet as well. Inside, there's just a handful of people. I spoke to them earlier, and they say they have concerns about the 28 supporters that have been charged by the Six Nations Police and the Ontario Provincial Police. But in spite of that, they say they're staying put. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Caledonia.
Thanks for that update, Annette. Well, it's time for a break, but still ahead, First Nations harvesters in the Yukon are being asked to stop fishing for Chinook salmon. Populations are dwindling, and they think they know why. We'll tell you after the break. First, here's tomorrow's weather forecast. Off to the east coast, we've got 21 and some rain for Charlottetown, 21 and sunshine for Halifax. La Grande River, snow and 5 degrees, some snow too for Kuujjuaq and 3. Chibougamau, 8 degrees and sunshine, 18 and sunny in Montreal. Ottawa, 15 and showers, 11 and sunshine for North Bay. 10 and showers for Sioux Lookout and Campus Casing, but 10 and sunshine for Timmins. 10s for Norway House and Puckatawagan, lots of sunshine. 9 in Barons River and Princess Harbour, sunshine there, 13 and sunny in Brandon. 19 in sunshine for Swift Current, 14 with a mix of sun and cloud in North Battleford. 12 for Buffalo Narrows and sunny skies, 10 for Stony Rapids. Welcome back. It's no surprise in the Yukon that Chinook salmon numbers are down this year. For the last 2 decades, Chinook stocks have been unpredictable, and First Nations people in the territory have been careful to conserve them. But as Sarah Connors tells us, the answer as to what's causing the depletion might lie across the U.S. border.
For Carl Sidney, this summer was like the last 20, a summer without Chinook salmon.
Zero. Today there is nothing.
This fish camp in Teslin was once a place of gathering for him and his extended family. Like most of his people, Sidney grew up eating Chinook salmon, which he says were once bountiful in the Yukon River.
There was lots. Put it like that, you know, like I guess a good way to put it is we could do our fishery for our family of 50. We could have all our fishery done in a matter of 5 days.
But these days, the camp is mostly abandoned.
The Yukon River is dotted with sonar projects designed to count the number of passing salmon. This year, about 50,000 Chinook salmon were expected at a sonar project on the border with Alaska. But in August, only 30,000 Chinook had been counted, making it one of the lowest counts on record.
As a result, a salmon advisory board recommended that First Nation people in the Yukon stop fishing Chinook for the rest of the year. That might be a big ask for some, but not in the Yukon. For years, the territory's Indigenous population have noticed far less Chinook in the Yukon River, and hardly any First Nations fish Chinook salmon. Carl Sidney fears this year's low count is a sign that Chinook might soon be facing extinction.
If we continue going down the road we're going right now, it's just a matter of 15 to 20 years that there isn't going to be any more Chinook. If we don't start doing something about it.
Yukon River Chinook live in the Bering Sea near Alaska, but migrate to the Yukon to spawn. Decades ago, drainage runs numbered about 300,000 fish. Now, it's half that number. First Nations in the territory have been trying for the last 2 decades to repopulate their stocks. For years, Teslin Tlingit First Nation had to fly in their salmon for ceremonies. Despite their efforts, results have been fleeting.
They're doomed from the beginning. Their whole life is just a fight, I guess.
No one can say for sure what's happening to these fish. Climate change, extreme weather, and even an influx of harbor seals have all been linked as possible causes. But for many First Nations here in the Yukon, the culprit is in Alaska.
Many First Nations people in the Yukon believe that commercial fisheries in Alaska over-harvested Chinook in the 1980s and 90s. Commercial fishing of Chinook is no longer allowed in the Yukon River, though sales of incidental catches are still permitted.
This year, for Canadians to see that now every fish that they harvest reduces that spawning escapement, that's pretty frustrating for them, I'm sure.
Despite failing to meet this year's border objective, area management biologist Holly Carroll says the department has a proven track record of meeting these goals in previous years, even surpassing it from 2014 to 2018.
We actually exceeded the border goal by almost an average of 20,000 extra fish. A lot of people like to say we've just failed to meet the goals every year. That's not the case. We actually found a management strategy where we were able to exceed the escapement goals with Canada.
Last year, the department failed to meet the number of fish allowed to escape for spawning by only 500 fish, which she says was unexpected due to relatively high sonar counts in Alaska. And the last 2 years, the department has noticed huge disparities in the number of fish entering Alaska and those making it to the Yukon. But as to what's causing the disparity remains a mystery.
That's the problem with salmon biology, is it's so complicated. By the time you think you've got it figured out, it'll double or it'll drop. I think the runs are going to come back in the sizes that are all over the map. And we just keep reacting to that. We keep trying to just, do the same thing.
For the First Nations people in the Yukon who have gone decades without fishing, the idea that Alaska has mostly been meeting the border objectives is hard to believe.
Can't agree with her. Maybe they met them goals a couple times, but this obviously is not enough.
Fishing season is ending and the final number of Chinook that made it to the Yukon is currently being counted. But for people like Carl Sidney, fishing season has already ended years ago.
And we've done without salmon for 20 years, what's another 20 years gonna, if we could rebuild the stock in 20 years, at least we'll have something for the future.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Great work, Sarah. It's no secret there are long wait lists for social housing in the Northwest Territories, but the challenges don't end once individuals have a roof over their head. Charlotte Moritz-Jacobs takes us to the Decho region to meet with people facing complexities within the housing system.
Okay. Every morning when Vanessa Villeneuve goes to the basement to turn on her water, she's immediately reminded of the many repairs needed for her home.
I have to shut it off here because the taps leak, the toilet runs.
No windows, a water tank on the ground, and poor circulation is a recipe for.
See, there's mold over there too.
The house was left to Villeneuve when her father died in 2000.
I did inherit all the issues. My brother Vincent and my sister Victoria assigned everything to me. I was just young. I was right into my teens.
She moved away and the house was occupied by several relatives. When she returned home to Fort Liard, Northwest Territories in January 2018, she was shocked.
Yeah, it doesn't work. No water comes out. But technically it's my room. So I live in a dining room. There's no balcony. So behind here, there are holes. I actually looked around and I cried because this is not the house I grew up in.
Fort Liard is made up of roughly 500 residents, a mix of Dene, Métis, and non-Indigenous. Located 37 kilometers north of British Columbia, folks here often travel south to Fort Nelson for things like supplies, health appointments, and just to see family. But with the provincial and territorial border being closed due to COVID-19, a lack of resources in this community is taking a toll on the people here.
Healthcare aid, Government of Alberta.
Upon graduation this June, the single mother of two began job interviews. Problem is, all of the positions are outside of Fort Liard, which means she wouldn't qualify to receive help from the local housing corporation.
If I move away from Fort Liard, I won't be able to apply for the forgivable loan because I won't be living here anymore. I have to be living in Fort Liard and in this house.
The forgivable loan is essential to help Villeneuve pay off housing arrears she had acquired in her early 20s. And she's not alone. In town, Anthony Barreau has lived on his parents' lot for the last 4 years. His housing issues date back to 2007, when the Housing Corporation moved his family.
I lived there about 5 years maybe in that building. I was molding up and they moved us out of there due to water contamination.
But rent skyrocketed in the new unit his family was placed in.
It was 300.
300?
Yes.
And after they did
when they moved us, it jacked up to 1480.
Wow. And it would have been yourself, your
plus
wife?
me, and my wife doesn't work at all. She was uneducated, so there's me plus my wife. There's 2, and there's another 4 kids. There's 6 of us who were living there.
Months before his wife passed away in 2011, Barreau was up to $24,000 in arrears. It's not just Fort Liard either. According to a 2019 survey by the NWT Bureau of Statistics, 42% of all homes in the territory have at least one major problem. And core needs like affordability and overcrowding are on the rise. APTN reached out to NWT Housing Corporation, but were unable to receive an interview before airtime. We did confirm, however, that a new community plan for Fort Liard is in the final stages to address housing issues.
Water was behind
For
here.
Villeneuve,
This never used to
she's
be
holding
behind
out.
here. And
There
I
used to
want
be
this
just
house to be
drywall.
fixed because I want to have a house that I can actually own, not be in debt. I want to have a home that I can actually call a home.
Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Fort Liard.
There was a groundbreaking ceremony on Atikameksheng First Nation this week, just west of Sudbury. A new 6-unit housing project is going up there, and the federal government is helping out in a cost-sharing arrangement that will provide about $1 million in funding. CTV's Elena Everson brings us this story.
A song at a traditional blessing ceremony to acknowledge and recognize the use of the land for a new 6-unit housing project.
Because we displace the animals and all the little crawlies that live in those areas, and they're going to be displaced by the construction, so we need to acknowledge them and to let them know that the construction is happening so that they need to find a new home.
The 6-unit modern housing project is being funded 50-50 by the federal government and the Atikameksheng Anishinaabe Band, and the chief says it's being designed to higher standards.
But we're also trying to build houses that are quality, high quality, that are going to last a long time. Typically, in the past, our funding has only been enough money to build what we used to call matchbox houses. They weren't very well insulated, or they weren't designed for our needs.
The insulation in the walls and the ceiling are higher than both the Ontario Building Code or the National Building Code. Flooring is a higher standard. Instead of going for a low standard vinyl flooring, we went to a high standard vinyl flooring. Roofing, we chose instead of a 15-year shingle, which is more typical, we chose a 25-year shingle.
Nickel Belt MP Mark Sade says the federal government acknowledges the need for improved housing on First Nations.
The federal government over the decades has not made this a priority, and we see many First Nations struggling with some of the housing. I think Michigan has been proactive over the years, but now we need to make sure that the federal government is more supportive.
Shovels are expected to go in the ground soon, with the project expected to be complete in March of 2021. The band says it also has plans to build more units. Elena Everson, CTV News, Atikameksheng.
Much of Turtle Island is enjoying the change of colors associated with fall, but if you think those in the Arctic tundra are missing out, you're wrong. We'll take you up there to see for yourself after the break, and here's the rest of tomorrow's weather forecast for the west and the north. Starting off in northern Alberta, we've got 14 and sunny skies in Fort McMurray, 17 with a mix of sun and cloud in Peace River, 17 and sunshine for Red Deer, 22 and sunny in Medicine Hat. Lots of smoke still from the southern fires, 21 and smoky in Campbell River and Vancouver. 20 and sunshine for Prince Rupert, 16 and sunshine for Fort Nelson. 15 and sunny in Beaver Creek, 10 and rain in Rock River. 15 and sunny for Norman Wells, 11 and sunshine for Yellowknife. Paulatuk, 8 and sunny, Tuktoyaktuk, 9 and sunshine. Baker Lake, snow and 3 degrees, 3 and sunshine in Chesterfield. Ugulik, 0 and sunshine. Pangertung and Clyde River, both 3 degrees and sunny. back. While this is the season the leaves are turning color, what happens when there are no trees? Our Kent Driscoll wants to show you that Nunavut changes colors in the fall too, and that the tundra is far from barren. This is from Iqaluit.
When people call Nunavut's tundra barren, they don't know what they're talking about. In order to see the real splendor out here on the land, you have to get really close. Inuit have 6 seasons, not 4, and right now we're smack in between 2 of them. Aoyak and Ukiaksak, basically summer and early fall. The land is far from barren this time of year. If you just look down, the tundra is teeming with life. Color too. Just the same way trees in the south change color, so does the tundra. Some of it even tastes as good as it looks. Arctic autumn is seriously underrated. Winter is not very far off, and as always, Inuit are watching for it. Just look out at Frobisher Bay. Sure, there's still open water, but look closer. There is snow on the tops of those hills across the bay. That always means the same thing. The days are getting shorter, and winter is not far off. Kent Driscoll, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
Stunning. A Mohawk filmmaker is walking away a winner from this year's Toronto International Film Festival that wraps up in its virtual festivities this weekend. Tracy Deer won the festival's Emerging Talent Award for her debut fiction feature, Beans. The film tells the story of a 12-year-old girl trying to find her place in her community during the Oka crisis. Deer drew from her own experiences as a teenager in Ganawage during the Oka dispute in the 1990s. Deer is most well known for her work on Mohawk girls and has released numerous documentaries. She accepted the award during a virtual event where she dedicated it to Indigenous youth.
This is something all of our Indigenous kids need to hear. Their dreams are important, their voice is important, and together we need to make a society that is safe for them and that they can thrive in. So I want to dedicate this award to them and to their future. And I want to put the challenge out to all of us to do what we can to make it better for them.
Big congrats to you, Tracy. That's a huge honor. And we're glad others in the film industry now know that she is one to watch. Well, that is your Wednesday news. I'm Melissa RIDGEN. Thanks for tuning in. Tonight, a little something for you Anishinaabe out there from the Red Lake Nation Boys and Girls Club.
Put tobacco on the ground, say me quits for my life, cause creator hold it down through the days and the nights. And I'ma tell you now that this native hella proud, so I say it loud. And I gotta burn sage when I'm starting out my day, cause I am on Ojibwe, war pain on my face, man, I'm feeling really ace. When they ask about my race, hey, I'ma say Max soup and wild rice, I got the whole family grubbing. It's powwow time, so the whole tribe buzzing. Everybody giving gaps, I got about 100 cousins. Let me tell you something. And I show my people love, give my grandmother hugs, and we give respect to the people living